Hello, I'm Anderson. Today I'm going to be looking over the top 10 facts, or things you should know about oxygen on the periodic table of elements. So this is my project, and let's get straight to it. So I've got 10 different, facts, tips, things you should know, and so I'm going to get right to it. So number 10 is the fact that oxygen actually has a color. So 10 is the worst and 1 is the best. So oxygen having a color isn't that important, but it is kind of cool to know. So when it is in a solid or a liquid form, it begins to have the color of a light blue. And then it can actually be other colors. It can be red, pink, orange, or black, depending on the way you do things. But that is such a cool fact, that oxygen actually has a color when in the air. Obviously, it doesn't have a color here. Let's move on straight on to number 2. So number 2 is that its density. So its density is 1.429 kilometers per centimeter to the third power, or cubed. So its density, it's kind of a cool thing that, air actually technically has a weight, that while oxygen is what we breathe and it's through the air, that it actually does have technically a weight. So, to move on to number 8, the fact that oxygen is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. Obviously, if I eat air, it's not like I'm getting a taste, and that's a cool thing to know. It's maybe not important, it's maybe not vital if you're doing some study about it, but it's still somewhat important to know that this air that we breathe does not technically have color, odor, or taste. Let's move on to number 7. So who discovered it? In 1774, Joseph Priestley discovered it on a study with 2 other, I believe it was, countries. So he was on a study mission with, I'm pretty sure, an Englishman, a Frenchman, and I can't seem to find the third country. But Carl Wilhelm, which is another scientist, also independently discovered oxygen. And so they both discovered it, and actually he got credit for it, Joseph Priestley. So let's move on to our next one. Number 6. So obviously, every gas has a state, every element has a state, and the element of oxygen has the state of gas. Now that's pretty obvious because it's in the air. It's not dripping, it's not water, it's not liquid, it's not solid, it is gas. So that's pretty obvious, but that is when it's at 20 degrees, and this will actually come in important later. Number 5, so we've got a cool fact that actually oxygen doesn't technically burn. That doesn't make sense because oxygen is important in combustion, it's important in fires, it's important that you have oxygen for something to burn, but itself, oxygen cannot burn. And so that's actually an interesting fact to know about the element oxygen. Number 4, so the location on the periodic table is important for any element. The location, it is in period 2, group 16, it is technically in the family 16. Group and family are very similar, I think there's only a few differences between them, and it's in block P, so that's kind of important. I'll put that up on the screen. Number 3, so oxygen has 2 shells. So obviously the atomic number tells us how many electrons that oxygen has, yes. And it has 8 electrons in the oxygen atom. Now it has 2 shells, and so if you look in the first shell, shell 1, the inner shell, you're going to find that there are 2 electrons in the first shell. And in the second shell, there are actually 6 electrons. And I'll put a picture of my Google drawing up on the screen up here. Let's move into our next one. We've got number 2. I really think that number 3 could be above number 2. It doesn't really matter. But I talked about temperature earlier, that at 20 degrees it's a gas, right? And that is Fahrenheit. I'm using Celsius for this next part, but it melts at negative 219 degrees Celsius, and it boils at negative 183 degrees Celsius. It's kind of funny that it's both negative. So if you're wanting to boil air or oxygen, you just got to get a room with negative 183 degrees Celsius. Easy, right? Let's move on to our number 1 out of 10 on the list of oxygen facts, stuff like that. Our number 1 is the periodic table technically location. I talked about the location of it, but we're going to use the symbol for oxygen, right? So you're going to see a lot of details here, and I'll pull out my sheet so that I can tell you exactly what it is. So oxygen, abbreviation, the symbol is an O, because oxygen. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Its atomic mass is 15,999 units. Its atomic number is 8, and its name is obviously oxygen. And it has 8 subatomic protons, 8 electrons, and 8 neutrons. So those are some cool details if you're ever researching oxygen. Thanks for watching today's video. That was our top 10 oxygen information, facts, etc. And I guess thanks for watching. Goodbye.